To the southeast of the old city of Beersheba in Israel is an ancient well. This isn't just any old pile of rocks, however. It is believed that this well was built by Abraham himself. But there's a problem. Another site, just a few miles off, claims to have the well of Abraham as well. And get this, both sides have evidence to back their claims. It's tradition versus archaeology. Join us as we lead you through this shocking discovery and uncover the truth of not just the well of Abraham, but Beersheba. Tel Beersheba covers an area of 45 acres and is located just east of Beersheba. It's at an elevation of 20 meters above the ground and is a completely parched and dry area. It's an old remnant of time, and there have been an insane number of discoveries here, so much so that an entirely separate computer program named Beersheva was created to process the data, and the final report was longer than the Bible itself. But not all of that information is necessary. We need to look at the relevant bits that'll help us determine whether Abraham really lived there, and if he really dug a well of oath in this place 4,000 years ago. The site is divided into quarters, each showcasing its own set of natural artifacts. It's got its own residential area, integrated into the stone walls around the palace. It also has a commercial district and a huge food shelter. Just walking around the place is guaranteed to yield ancient pottery, as it's strewn around everywhere. Tel Beersheba is interesting, but where's the well of Abraham? In Genesis 21, it says that Abraham moves to live in the Negev, which is around the same area, and he enters the territory under King Abimelech. Of course, given that it's a hot and dry place, you'd need water, and that was the case for Abraham too, so he dug a well. But the people of Abimelech seize the well, which causes a dispute between the two parties. Abraham then goes to the king directly to complain. The two decide to avoid war and reach a common ground for a treaty. They both swear an oath, and Abraham is announced the owner of the well. This is why the place is called Beersheba. Ber means well, and Sheba means oath, the well of oath. Is this the well of Abraham? The well is just at the entrance of the city, and it's actually outside of the city. This baffles some people. It's thought that the well was built first, and then the city was built next to it. This supports the story of Abraham. But let's dig deeper, literally. The depth of the well, which is equal to the length of 20 stories of a building, makes it sure that the water should have been available all year round. But going down the well to confirm this has proved to be difficult. Luckily, there's another pit to the north of the city, which is much wider and leads down. Going down a flight of stairs leads to a tunnel. Here you can find one of the most impressive systems of water reservoirs in every corner. The mountain has been chiseled so much that it's almost like a snake bath, which descends lower and lower. But this pit wasn't as deep as the well because it didn't need to be. Apparently, floodwaters from nearby streams filled up the reservoir. Floodwaters and streams in the desert? Yeah? This brings us to the Hebron River, which is only a stretch of land away from the well. It's where Abraham's well could have fetched water from. That was almost 4,000 years ago. But the interesting thing is, there's a water stream that is still here to this day. So, there's an ancient city, an ancient well, and a water source. All the evidence points in only one direction. This is the authentic well. It could very well be, if it weren't for one very big problem. The site dates as far back as just the 12th century BC. That's 800 years after Abraham. So what about the well? Does that mean it was also built 800 years after Abraham? It's difficult to tell the exact time for the original use of the well, but there appears to be circumstantial evidence that suggests it was dug during the 12th century. Again, almost a millennia after Abraham. This leads us with more questions than answers. Why is this claimed to be the well of Abraham? Why aren't there more artifacts on the site from Abraham's time? Did he really live here? There's a shocking explanation for this, more shocking than anything else we've understood so far. A single book, and what's in it, changes almost everything we know about Beersheba. This explanation stems from the other site that claims to be Beersheba, on the edge of the modern city, which is only a few miles away from the current site. There's a place there called Abraham's Well International Visitor Center, and they claim to have the actual Well of Abraham. And this is where the book comes into play. Written by a man named William M. Thompson, it's titled the land and the book. And this book holds the final piece to the puzzle. It's the year 1857. Dr. Thompson is accompanied by his fellow travelers on a journey to the Middle East. They have one goal in mind: to compile the world's best archaeological survey of the Holy Land. They travel from Dan to Beersheba and used a scientific method to write down a detailed record of their findings. Thompson compiles a record of his colleagues, and one of them, Dr. Robinson, finds 2 wells in Beersheba. When he asks the local people the name of the area, they reply Beersheba, the Well of Oath. The 2 wells are located only a few feet away from each other. Thompson actually states that these wells were in use when he got there, and he got to try water from them too. He describes it as sweet and pure and in great abundance. There's a record when it comes to dating the well by Lieutenant Condor, who found an inscription in the well in Arabic. It dates to the 12th century, but it doesn't mention Abraham. It says instead Muhammad Rasul Allah, which means Muhammad, the messenger of Allah. This inscription is very famous amongst Muslims and is a profession of their faith. But how does this relate to Abraham and his well? Ibrahim, is one of the key figures in Islam, and the inscription could be in connection to that. So we know now that according to Arab tradition, this is the Well of Abraham. Around the 12th century, they might have put a stamp, the Muhammad Rasul Allah inscription, to commemorate its significance to Islam. But this is just speculation. So, this brings us to a rather confusing crossroads. If this is the Well of Beersheba, then what was the other site that we explored first? Tel Beersheba. And this is the most shocking part. Apparently, it wasn't identified as Beersheba at all. When Lieutenant Condor scoured the area, he found 2 sites, Tel Beersheba in the outskirts and the 2 wells close to the modern city. According to him, the area in the outskirts was referred to as Tel Es-Seba by locals, not Tel Beersheba. And he goes on to say that this Tel is an entirely different city. He adds that the wells of Abraham are in the biblical Beersheba, which actually makes perfect sense when you rely on Arab tradition, and Condor wasn't alone in thinking so. Many archaeologists and surveyors who came across the area, like Dr. Smith and Dr. Robinson, reached the same conclusions based on their findings. The biblical Beersheba has the wells of Abraham. But this begs the question, why would the site be renamed from Tel Es-Saba to Tel Beersheba, especially when you have Beersheba right next to it? Unfortunately, the reason for that still remains a mystery. So if Tel Beersheba is not biblical Beersheba, what is it? Condor and Thompson think that it's the other city mentioned in Joshua 19, the Sheba. Others think it's the same city as Beersheba, but that the name of the well is just Sheba. But none of it is conclusive, and it's all very confusing. Has Tel Beersheba been misidentified for 30 years? Maybe the Arab tradition is wrong. Maybe Condor and Thompson weren't thinking straight. We don't know for sure.